All right, welcome everybody to our spring town hall. I'm Carrie Metters. I'm the Senior Director of Technology and Training and University Personnel. And I'm only going to talk for about a minute and hand you off to Joanne. But thanks for coming, and more people are coming in, so we'll let them get here. But today our focus is on leaves, workers' compensation, and accommodations. So most of the time we'll be hearing from our leaves team today. As always, we are recording our webinar, and we will be posting our slides as well as the video for today's session, along with all of the Q&A that came in prior to the session and that comes in throughout the session. We'll get all of that posted, and we'll be putting that on our website, and we'll send out an email to let you know when it's all ready to go. All right. So we are using the Q&A feature today, not the chat. So you'll be able to see our chat to you, but you will not be able to chat back to us. However, if you have a question, you can find the Q&A feature in your toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom window. Feel free to put any questions in there throughout the presentation, and some of those we'll just answer on screen. Some of them we'll answer live in the session, okay? So I'm gonna turn it over to Joanne Wright, our Senior Associate Vice President, to kind of kick things off. Joanne.
Hi, good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us. And so I'm only going to talk for a couple of minutes as well. We have a lot to talk about, as you may imagine: leaves, workers' comp, accommodations. It's a lot of material. We have an excellent team here to help anybody with questions about leaves, workers' comp, or accommodations. So very proud of them. They work hard. They are constantly reviewing laws and regulations, getting their certifications in various areas to make sure that they have all the information, that the most current information that's needed for all of these areas. It's a highly regulated area, all three of them. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time, and I want to introduce now Jasmine Perez, who's our manager of this entire area: leaves, workers' comp, and employee accommodations. So Jasmine, take it away.
Thanks, Joanne. Good morning, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today. As Carrie and Joanne mentioned, we have a lot to discuss. Leave programs, including eligibility, pay, benefits, workers' compensation, and accommodations. So let's start by meeting our team and our wonderful leader, Ms. Vasquez.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. As Jasmine mentioned, and everybody else, there's a lot of information to cover, so we'll get started on that immediately. But thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Anita. And then, of course, I'm Jasmine Perez, manager of the leave, workers' compensation, and accommodation programs.
Hi, I'm Melanie, Lisa, workers' comp analyst.
I'm Elizabeth Munoz. I'm the employment accommodation analyst.
You're a wonderful team. Okay, so most of what we'll be discussing today can be found on our leave programs website, which is linked here on our slide, or you can search sjsu.edu/UP under My Benefits and Leave Programs. So here you'll find information on all of our programs, resources, forms, and frequently asked questions. There we go. Okay, so if you missed any part of our presentation today, or you'd like to go back to reference anything that we've discussed, you can access all of our town hall presentations by clicking here. The title of the slide is linked directly to the website, or you can go to sjsu.edu/UP under news and UP town halls, which I believe is new. So I kind of wanted to highlight that. Here you'll find all of our past town hall meetings, including all the Zoom recordings, slide decks, and Q&As. Okay, so let's dive in. Let's start with the most common leave, which is one that falls under family medical leave, or FML. Family medical leave provides eligible employees up to 12 weeks of job protected unpaid leave for certain family and medical reasons. It guarantees continuation of your health benefits, including medical, dental, and vision. And you also have the right to return to your same or equivalent position. So to be eligible for FML, you have to have worked at least 1 year or an academic year. And for some bargaining units, you must also have worked at least 1,250 hours prior to your leave. And those bargaining units are 1, 6, 8, 10, non-represented, like confidentials and MPPs, and student employees. So if you are absent for 3 to 5 consecutive days, that's depending on your bargaining unit, then your time off should be designated as FML if it's for a qualifying reason. Okay, so those FML qualifying reasons are to care for your own serious health condition, to care for a family member with a serious health condition, and a covered family member is spouse, child, parent, sibling, grandparent, grandchild, or designated person. You can also take FML to care and bond with your newborn or newly placed adopted or foster child, or to care for a covered military family member with a serious health condition, in which you are then entitled to 26 weeks of leave. Okay, so types of leave. FML does not need to be taken continuously. You have the right to take the leave several different ways. A full leave is one that is continuous. Intermittent leave is one that is taken in separate blocks of time and is typically used to attend medical appointments or treatments or for episodes. And partial reduced schedule leave is one that reduces the time that you work each day or week. So for intermittent and partial reduced schedule leave, those leaves must be medically necessary and certified by your doctor. Okay, the other more common leave is pregnancy disability leave, or PDL. So unlike FML, which has the eligibility requirements of working 1 year or 1,250 hours, there are no eligibility requirements for pregnancy disability leave. You're eligible upon hire, and if you're disabled by pregnancy, childbirth, or other pregnancy-related conditions. So under PDL, you're entitled to 4 months of unpaid job-protected leave, which can be taken for any period of time that your doctor certifies that you are disabled by pregnancy or pregnancy-related condition. And similar to FML, you can take PDL on a full or part-time basis if it's medically necessary. And a standard pregnancy leave or an uncomplicated pregnancy, the standard leave is typically 4 weeks before your due date and 6 weeks after you deliver, or 8 weeks if you deliver by cesarean. And similar to FML, your benefits will continue without interruption, and you are also entitled to return to the same or equivalent position. Okay, so pregnancy alone isn't considered a disability, but there are some pregnancy-related conditions that may be covered under PDL. So that may be pre or postnatal care, which is usually when the 4 weeks before and 6 weeks after come in. Gestational diabetes, postpartum depression, and severe morning sickness, just to name a few common ones. Okay, so there's a lot of talk about unpaid leave that you're entitled to, but more importantly, like, how do we get paid? So there's several pay options that you have. While you are on an approved leave, you are required to use your available leave credits, such as sick, vacation, CTO, or personal holiday, and parental leave. You may also qualify for non-industrial disability insurance if the leave is for your own illness. And you can also participate in our catastrophic leave donation program. Okay, so non-industrial disability insurance.
Well,
or-
and just before you continue, I'm sorry, I just wanted to maybe ask about the pregnancy disability and FML. They are concurrent or consecutive? You have both, right? You have both options, so it's.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry,
Yeah,
yes.
that's okay. I know it's always.
Yeah,
confusing, right?
we'll
Because
get
there's a
into
number of
that one.
things. Okay,
We'll
perfect.
get into that when we have scenarios, but yes. PDL is separate and distinct from family medical leave. It's its own block of leave. They do not run concurrently. Okay, so for non-industrial disability insurance, or NDI, it's a wage continuation program that's administered by EDD and provides up to 250 a week for most bargaining units, or 125 a week for units 3, 8, and excluded. So while on approved NDI, you may also supplement with catastrophic leave donations, which we'll talk about next. EDD and your doctor determine your period of eligibility, but your pay is still processed through our payroll. While on NDI, you do not accrue service credit, sick, or vacation time, and your probationary period will be extended. And so if you're eligible and would like to apply, our department will send you the NDI application, which you will then send to your doctor to complete and submit to EDD directly. Okay, our catastrophic leave donation program, or as we call it, CAT leave, it allows you to voluntarily donate or receive vacation and or sick leave credits. You're eligible if you or your immediate family member are completely incapacitated, meaning unable to work. You must be on an approved leave under FML, NDI, or ADA, which we'll talk about when we get to accommodations. You also have to have exhausted all available credits, including vacation, sick, PTO, and personal holiday. You must also have applied for NDI if your leave is for your own illness. For donations, you can donate a maximum of 40 hours in a fiscal year. And the fiscal year is July through June, is that right, Anita? Or June to July?
I'm sorry.
The fiscal year for CAT donations,
Yes, it's fiscal year.
and is that July through June?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. So if you are a recipient, you may receive both sick and vacation donations if the leave is for your own illness. If your leave is to care for a family member, then you may receive vacation donations only. So our CAT donation website is linked here, along with the donation form and the participation request form. Okay, parental leave. Parental leave is paid leave of up to 30 working days, which equals out to about 6 weeks. It can be used during the birth or placement of a child, and it runs concurrently with other eligible leaves such as FML or PDL. And I'll provide an example of that when we get to our scenarios. Parental leave has to start within 60 days of your child's arrival and must be taken consecutively unless mutually agreed with your appropriate administrator. You would need to submit some type of supporting documentation, such as a birth certificate, birth record, or a doctor's note with your estimated delivery date. The faculty has more specific parental leave. It must begin 60 days prior to the child's arrival and end 75 days after arrival per your Article 23 of your CBA. And due to the nature of your work and to prevent the least amount of disruptions for student learning, Article 23 also offers additional flexibility with parental leave. So in lieu of 30 days of parental leave, you can take a 40% workload reduction, which can be applied to 1 full semester. And you'll work directly with your chair and dean to work out the logistics of how the 40% reduction would be applied. And faculty also has a leave sharing option, which if both parents work for San Jose State, it allows one partner to donate all or parts of their parental leave to the other. Okay, leave without pay, this one's specific to staff. We'll discuss faculty leave without pay a few slides down. But for staff, to be eligible for a leave without pay, you have to be a permanent full-time or part-time employee. You can take the leave on a full or partial basis, which does not have to be medically necessary, like under FML and PDL. And the leave can be granted for up to 1 year. Some qualifying reasons to take leave would be for the purposes of unpaid sick leave, family leave, or other personal reasons. Okay, so there's 2 types of leave without pay. There's an informal leave, which is one that is 15 working days or less. It must be approved by your appropriate administrator, and it does not require approval from UP. A formal leave without pay is one that is more than 15 working days with a 30-day notice. A formal leave without pay must be approved by your appropriate administrator, your AVP, and final approval by Senior AVP of University Personnel, Joanne Wright. Okay. So benefits while on a leave without pay are not protected. If you're on a leave without pay for more than 1 full pay period, then you will be responsible to pay your full health insurance premiums by setting up a direct pay authorization with your benefits representative. Your sick, vacation, and service time is not approved, and you are guaranteed the right to return to the same classification. Slide, thank you, Carrie. So let's put all that into a scenario, because I know that's a lot. And I tried to pick some kind of realistic scenarios for you. So Jane is due in November and has been placed on pregnancy disability 4 weeks before her due date and 6 weeks after she delivers. So the top line here shows what type of protected leave it falls under, and the bottom shows how she'll be paid during her leave. So during the 10 weeks of pregnancy disability leave, Jane used the 6 weeks of parental leave pay, which is what I mean when I say that parental leave runs concurrently with other eligible leaves. So Jane was eligible for PDL, and she used her parental leave pay concurrently at the same time. It's not necessarily a separate block along with other eligible leaves. She also used 2 weeks of sick and 2 weeks of vacation. So after her PDL, she's entitled to 12 weeks of baby bonding time under family medical leave, or FML. So she had enough leave credits to cover 10 weeks of her leave and was unpaid for the last 2 weeks. So her benefits are still maintained, even though a portion of her leave is unpaid, because it falls under family medical leave. Next scenario. Okay, so this is a leave that falls under family medical leave to care for a family member. So John needs to take 12 weeks off to care for his mother, but needed to extend the leave an additional 4 weeks. Since he exhausted his 12 weeks of FML, John will need to apply for a leave without pay. So John worked with us, and he received approval from his department and AVP, and he worked with his benefits representative to pay his health insurance premiums directly for the month that he was on a leave without pay, because it fell during a full pay period. Okay, so requesting leave. So regardless of what type of leave you're requesting, with the exception of the informal leave without pay, because that isn't processed through UP. You should submit a leave request form, which I've linked here for both staff and faculty, because they have separate forms. And so Carrie, let's go ahead and click on the staff request form. Or go to the staff request form. Okay, so here's the leave of absence request form that you would use for FML, PDL, leave without pay, military. So the first section here is the your personal information. The middle section is the type of leave that you're taking. And then the period of absence is also the type of leave that you're taking. So whether that's full or intermittent or partial and reduced or leave without pay. So you'll notice for the intermittent and the partially reduced pay, it asks for your anticipated schedule, meaning the frequency and duration of the leave. This should match what your doctor submits on their doctor's note. And then for the pay leave credits. So here is where you'll let us know how you want to be paid, which leave credits you want to have applied. And then the bottom section is your signature, and if it's for the just a regular leave, a paid leave, you would sign this section here. And your department or appropriate administrator, immediate leave, and then the leave program manager will sign off. If it's for a leave without pay, then this is where you'll have your MPP, your AVP or dean, and then senior AVP of university personnel with a final approval. And then the last page will show your employee responsibilities, what the department responsibilities are, and what our responsibilities are during your leave. Okay, so then once you submit your leave request form, you'll also need to submit some type of supporting documentation. So for medical leave, you would submit the medical certification form, and that can be used if you're requesting leave for yourself or for a family member. If the leave is for yourself, you're also required to submit a return to work certification prior to your return to work. So this form is completed by your doctor and tells us whether you're returning to work full duty or with restrictions. And there is a separate form if you're requesting PDL or paternity leave, which basically just certifies the estimated due date. And then for a formal leave without pay, you would need to submit a personal statement explaining the reasons for your leave along with the request form. So for any type of leave, you should give as much advance notice as possible, or at least 30 days or 14 days, depending on your CBA, if the leave is foreseeable. So once you let us know your intent to take a leave, you have 15 days, calendar days to submit your supporting medical documentation. And then once you submit your request and your supporting documentation, then we will notify you of your rights and responsibilities, whether your leave has been approved, and how it would be designated. So meaning if it'll fall under FML or PDL or a leave without pay. And I've linked the CBAs here for you all. Okay, so this isn't as common, but we also offer 30 paid calendar days for military leave if you're required to report to active military duty in the U.S. Armed Forces. And for bereavement, you're entitled to 2 to 5 days of paid bereavement leave, depending on your CBA, for an immediate family member. And immediate family member is also defined in your CBA, which I've linked here again. Okay, so faculty specific leave without pay. There's 2 options, professional and personal. Both can be taken for 1 year with a possible extension for 1 additional year. The leave must be a full leave and cannot be taken on a partial basis. You can take a professional leave for the purpose of research, advanced study, professional development, or other personal purposes that will benefit San Jose State upon your return. While on approved professional leave, you continue to accrue service credit towards sabbatical, difference in pay, service salary increase, and seniority for a maximum of 1 year. All of which may be forfeited if the conditions of the leave are not met, meaning you possibly didn't return after your leave. You can also take a personal leave for the purposes of unpaid sick, temporary outside employment, or other personal reasons. So you do not accrue service credit towards sabbatical, difference in pay, service salary, or seniority while on a personal leave of absence. Both leaves require approval from your chair and dean, as well as the senior director of academic employee relations. And this is all listed in Article 22, leaves of absences without pay for Unit 3. Okay, so in order to apply, you have to submit a request form. There's one request form for both personal and professional. You have to provide a personal statement if you're requesting a personal leave, and then any supporting documentation for your professional leave. Okay, so I'd like to take this time and kind of shine a spotlight on our employee assistance program, specifically with Life Matters. And the reason why I wanted to highlight this resource, this free resource, is because typically when someone needs to take a leave of absence, a lot of times it comes during a very stressful and emotional time for you and your family. And Life Matters offers some really great resources and support to help you get through those tough times. So I've linked the website here, along with an orientation video. There is a password that's required, and that's provided on the link here. Okay, so before we move on to workers' compensation, are there any questions on leave? I know that was a lot to unpack.
Well, I'm not going to give a question, but I'm just going to make a statement because, as you said, it is a lot to unpack. So I just wanted to remind everybody, with all that, there's forms, there's things to remember and understand, and as Jasmine pointed out, there's lots of things going on often when there's a leave situation happening, whether it's medical leave or pregnancy or whatever it is. There could be pregnancy issues. So don't think that you're on your own with trying to fill out the forms and figure out what you have to do. The team is here to help you. So if you're faced with something upcoming or something current, it's happening right at the moment, it could be an emergency or urgent situation. That notice period doesn't apply for an emergency or urgent situation. But so if you need to talk to somebody about how you put this in process, reach out and they can help you with the form and help you understand what you're entitled to. Because there are a variety of programs and they overlap or they're concurrent or whatever they are, and they offer the ability to do different things. So and also if you're worried about the benefits and how that comes into play and how you're going to get paid, they're here to help. So don't think that you're on your own. I just wanted to add that because looking at all this, it's very daunting. It's hard to interpret everything. So
I know, sorry.
no, but that's what it is. That's what
Yeah.
the nature of this is, which is
Yeah.
why this team is so great. They're here to give you that support and information. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Yes, thank you, Joanne. Okay, let's dive into our next topic, workers' compensation. So workers' compensation guarantees certain benefits if you're injured on the job. It provides medical care, lost wages, rehabilitation, and while it's rare, it also provides death benefits to your beneficiaries, which also serves as a good reminder to keep your beneficiary records and forms up to date. Okay, so Cedric is our third-party administrator who processes all of our claims for San Jose State, as well as for all 23 campuses, CSU campuses. Our campus has a dedicated adjuster. Her name is Yvonne Rivera, and I've listed her contact information here. She assists throughout the entire claim process as well. So for medical care, in the event of a medical emergency, of course, call 911 or UPD. If you're ever in doubt about whether it's a medical emergency or not, call 911. So for minor first aid injuries, you can visit the Student Wellness Center. But for all other injuries beyond first aid, you will need to seek treatment at one of our occupational medical facilities, like Concentra or Kaiser, if you're already an active Kaiser member. So I've listed these available clinics and their locations on here, and it's also on our website. So there are two forms that are required when filing a workers' compensation claim. The first is the employer's first report, and this is completed by the supervisor or manager. The other is the DWC-1 form, and then if you want to, let's click on that, because that one is also a really long form. So it's 4 pages long. The first 3 pages are information and resources about your workers' compensation rights and benefits. And the reason why it is so long, it's split, it's provided to you in both English and Spanish. And the last page of the form is the one that needs to be completed and submitted to UP. So there's a section for the injured worker to complete, that first box there. And then the second section is for the supervisor or manager to complete. And so when completing these forms, please be sure to address whether or not you sought treatments and where. And if so, if the doctor assigns you any work restrictions, you could go back to the slide, Carrie. Thank you. And whether or not the doctor assigned work restrictions and whether or not you're missing time from work due to the injury. Okay, next
I
slide.
think we have a question here that might be good for Joanne to answer. So has there ever been a case where the appropriate administrator does not approve a staff leave request, but they have a legitimate reason? If so, what would happen in that case?
Okay, I think it's important to distinguish approving a leave and then also notifying about a leave. So there's different types of leaves, as Jasmine said. So if there's certain leaves that people are entitled to based on their qualifications for that. So for instance, if somebody has a medical request, you're basically notifying the appropriate administrator, but the appropriate administrator, it's already been vetted by our leaves team, and they're saying, like, okay, there's a legitimate medical reason, they're entitled to this. There's a notification that's given to the appropriate administrator, but there's no right to refuse that leave or turn it down, that type of thing. So I think this question maybe is focusing on leaves without pay, right? So there's a personal leave without pay request, for example. So there, the appropriate administrator or the people in the department and the, like say the college or the unit, would have, they can weigh in on whether they recommend that or not. And then it would come to me for final approval based on recommendations. There may be legitimate business reasons why they can't, have a person out for a leave without pay or, for an extended period of time. So it does vary. There can be situations where it's just not recommended due to those business operations needs. So oftentimes leaves without pay come up against the operations of the department or the unit. So that might be a reason why.
Thanks, Joanne.
Yep.
Okay, Carrie, we can go on to the next slide. So some frequently asked questions about workers' compensation is who's covered under workers' comp. So you are covered if you're faculty, staff, student assistant, or appointed volunteer. What injuries do I report and when do I report? So it's really important to report any and all injuries to your manager the same day of the injury. The claim documents should be received by UP within 3 days. But preferably the same day of the injury. So we do strongly encourage you to report all injuries the same day because this helps us in identifying any and addressing any, possible safety hazards and providing your benefits to you in a timely manner. Okay. Do I get paid for follow-up visits and therapy appointments? So no, time lost for medical and therapy appointments are not considered temporary disability periods, and you should use your available sick time. Do I pay for medical bills or prescriptions? So no, you will not have to pay any out-of-pocket expenses for medical care related to your injury. And you will actually receive a pharmacy card in the mail that you can use to fill your prescriptions to avoid having to pay anything out of pocket. Okay, industrial disability leave or IDL and TD, which is temporary disability. So once your claim has been accepted, and if you're missing time from work, you will be placed on industrial disability leave, which pays your full salary for the first 22 working days. There is a 3-day waiting period, so you'll have to use your sick hours for those 3 days, but that waiting period is waived if you miss more than 15 days or if you're hospitalized. So after the 22 days, IDL is then reduced to 2/3 of your wages, and it's available to you for a maximum of 52 weeks. You do, however, have the option of supplementing the 2/3 IDL with your sick leave hours. And if your period of disability exceeds IDL's 52 weeks, then you will be placed on temporary disability or TD. And TD pays a flat daily rate for each calendar day you're off work. And that daily rate is computed and processed by Sedgwick. So you'll actually receive payments directly from Sedgwick if you are on TD. And under IDL, you do continue to accrue sick leave credits and service credits. However, you do not accrue service credit while on TD. Okay. So before we move on to our next topic, which is accommodations, are there any questions about workers' compensation? Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so all workplace accommodations are processed through the Employment Accommodation Resource Center, or the EARC. We are responsible for collecting and maintaining confidential medical information for individuals with disabilities, as well as determining the reasonable and appropriate workplace accommodations. Okay. Workplace accommodations are mandated under both federal and state laws. The Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, is federal law, and the Fair Employment and Housing Act is state law. Both laws make it unlawful for employers to discriminate against individuals with disabilities and who fail to make reasonable accommodations. Under these laws, a disability is defined as someone who has a permanent physical or mental impairment that limits one or more major life activity, has a record of such impairment, or is regarded as having such impairment. So what exactly are reasonable accommodations? Reasonable accommodations are any modification or adjustment to your job or work environment that will allow you to effectively perform the essential functions of your job. So some examples of a reasonable accommodation might include a modified work schedule, a leave of absence, or assistive devices, to name a few. So a leave of absence under ADA is usually explored after you've exhausted all of your FML, because your FML entitlement would run first. Okay, to register with the ERC, there are 2 forms required. The first is the intake form, which is kind of like a self-assessment form. It helps us evaluate your requests as it relates to your restrictions and limitations. The other is the EARC verification form, which is completed by your doctor. And we will also need a copy of your position description so that we have a better understanding of what exactly your essential job functions are. Alternative documentation may be accepted as long as it addresses the same information as on our verification form. So what we're looking for from your doctor is what your limitations are, how they affect you and your job performance, what specific tasks are causing barriers for you, and what accommodations are they recommending, if any, that would help reduce or eliminate some of these barriers. So when working with your doctor, I think it's also important to provide them with a copy of your position description so that they also have an understanding of what you do for work. I believe that there's no PD for faculty, so you can use Article 20 of your CBA, which I've listed here.
There are, the employment letter is also another option for faculty. There's lots of duties listed, oftentimes listed in there as well, but that's a good, Article is good too, yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the interactive process. So once you submit your documentation, we will then begin what is called the interactive process. It's basically a collaborative effort with meetings, discussions between you, the EARC, and your department to determine whether an effective accommodation can be made and implemented. So all accommodations are individualized and they're based on the disability and the nature of your job. And there really are no two that are exactly alike. It's all case by case. So this is not an exhaustive list, of course, but here are some examples of disabilities that we can help with in determining accommodation and just to help remove any barriers so that you can perform your job safely. Okay, next slide. Okay, so some FAQs for accommodations. So do I need to disclose my diagnosis or disability? No, you do not need to disclose your diagnosis to the EARC or your appropriate administrator. We only need to understand what your functional limitations are. And what functional limitations are your inability to perform a set of actions because of a physical or mental restriction. My limitations have changed. What do I do? So if you already have an approved accommodation and it's no longer effective or serving you, or your limitations have changed, then notify us so that we can begin the interactive process again, and then get a better understanding of how we can implement any changes for you. Is my accommodation part of my personnel record? No. So all records related to your accommodation are confidentially filed with the EARC and are kept separately from your personnel files. Okay. Before we move on to our sources and kind of concluding what we presented today, are there any questions on accommodations?
I'll jump in again without a question, but also again to encourage this area, and as all these three areas are complicated and complex, requires certain qualifications, but also the interactive process to determine the appropriate accommodation. I know the word accommodation, often gets thrown around, but there's really the three individuals here, and particularly Elizabeth, she's the expert, will be best able to assist you. So that's the person you should go to when you have a need to talk about an accommodation or possible, qualifying disability that you need to talk to somebody about. So please don't hesitate to do that. It is, again, a very complex area. So make sure you get that right information from the person who's highly trained to do it. She's been doing a lot of, work on it and stays current. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Joanne.
And if I don't know if there's any supervisors listening or no to today, but when someone comes to you, some people may come to you and confidentially tell you that they need an accommodation. Don't try to determine that on your own. You need to direct people to Elizabeth to make that determination.
Mm-hmm.
and assist.
Yes, especially since supervisors, managers, or appropriate administrators really shouldn't be collecting confidential medical information that really should be submitted and kept confidentially with the ERC only.
Exactly.
Okay, so everything that we discussed today, leave, workers' compensation, accommodations, these are all mandated by law, as Joanne has mentioned. So I've listed some sources here by each topic. Feel free to peruse through these links. They offer some really great information and resources. So like Joanne mentioned, yes, we unpacked a lot of information today, a lot of which are usually personal and involve overlapping of things. So my team and I may be biased, of course, but I have the most amazing team who is super knowledgeable. And like Joanne says, we do our best to stay on top of any updates and laws. And we understand that these topics can be very complex, very difficult to navigate by yourself. So please reach out to us if there's anything that we can assist you with, and we're here for you.
Yes, and everything, again, I don't think it's hard to say like, oh, here's the standard, answer to any question. And because
Right.
every situation is so personal and can be, overlapping with very many different things. So again, the sources that you just saw that Jasmine listed, some partial, list of sources, everything that we do on these areas, it's highly regulated, and the laws and the regulations are what we consult to make sure that we are on top of everything that needs to be happening in these procedures and processes that we're discussing with you. So definitely, again, consult. You're not on your own on this. We're here to help you. Jasmine, Elizabeth, they have been getting certified in various things. I just want to mention this too. Ergonomics is another area that comes out of this department, this unit.
Yes.
93, right? So Elizabeth is certified in ergonomics. So if you have questions or concerns about equipment that you're using and you need to have an evaluation, or would like to have an evaluation done of how your workspace is, Elizabeth is somebody who is qualified to do that. So ergonomic evaluations can also help with preventing injuries and things like that. So
right.
we very much liked to publicize that. So don't
Yes.
hesitate to reach out or talk to your administrator about that. And if you want to add anything to that, Jasmine.
Yes, thank you, Joanne. And Melanie also will be getting her certifications for ergonomic evaluations soon as well. So
Yes, they're constantly busy. You guys are constantly busy with
Yeah,
that.
sure.
Yes, well, yeah. And I think you just got recently certified too in something. I never forget what it was.
I did. I got certified as a certified disability management specialist. Yeah, so it involves just making sure to keep up to date as much as possible. Laws surrounding everything that we just discussed change constantly. FML alone changed, I think, several different times in the last 2 years, with adding, family members and who's covered, and workers' compensation, the same. I think there's some differences in or a change in the law for delayed claims. It used to be 90 days and now they've changed that to 60 days. So there's a lot that's involved with keeping up to date with these, and we're constantly doing training and advancement. So we are can provide you with the most up-to-date information relative to what you're reaching out for.
And the importance when you can of, so for workers' comp in particular, injury on the job, you need to get that, report that immediately. Don't hesitate. If you're anticipating that that you have a medical issue or a pregnancy or childbirth coming up, start early, get things laid out, understood, so that you understand what's happening. Again, when there's emergencies and urgent situations, obviously you're not held to a 30-day notice period, right? So those things happen too. So again, reach out as soon as you can on these things. So again.
And one thing that I also didn't mention, I'm sorry, I'm glad that you brought that up. It's because oftentimes there are extensions during leave. If you have some kind of medical complication that might require you to extend your leave, of course, let us know as soon as possible. We understand that we can't, enforce a waiting period if you're not sure if it's an emergency or if the doctor just prescribed something for you. Just let us know as soon as possible. There should be constant communication between us and your department. So you do also have that responsibility to keep your department up to date with your leave, your intent to return to work, so that they can figure out their operations accordingly with the extension or leave.
Oh, I remembered something from one of the slides I just wanted to mention. We were talking about parental leave. There's lots of concurrent things and overlaps and things like that involved with parental. But one thing for the faculty, again, I don't know if there's faculty on listening, but there's a 40% workload reduction option, which means there's a 60% technically work period. But many people are able to, if they have sick time accumulated, they're able to, apply that as well for, the semester to reduce that 60%, maybe for the entire period. So again, talk to Jasmine and the team about those options.
Yeah, thank you, Joanne. And it doesn't have to be, the other 60% doesn't have to be taken fully. You can also take, maybe 40% or just teach one class, or it could be worked out.
I know there's some questions. I know there's been questions coming in throughout, and I think there's been some answers happening here. So everybody can see those, right? In our, okay.
So I think the leaves team has been answering them as they've come through. There's a couple that just came in. I don't know if you might want to answer the last one, Joanne, that just came in. I have a couple of colleagues claim they don't need to sign up for intermittent FML for weekly medical appointments because they are exempt employees and thus can leave early when needed. Any additional insight to that? That might be a good one for everyone to hear the answer to.
Well, I'll let Jasmine talk about the FML piece of it. I think there's a question about exempt employees leaving early when needed. So exempt employees are expected to get work done if that's the reference to that. But I'm going to let Jasmine answer the intermittent FML issue there on that one.
Mm-hmm. So FML is actually the only exception where you can deduct partial leave for exempt employees. So with the exception of Unit 4, so all other units, even if you are an exempt employee and you are taking time off for medical appointments or for any FML qualifying reason, then you should apply for family medical leave and your time should be deducted using your available leave credits. So FML really is the only exception where you can do that, except for Unit 4.
I see a question here, or it's a comment, not a question, talking about a horrible experience with reasonable accommodations through SJSU ERC. So obviously, I don't know that situation. But if you'd like to talk to me about that, that's fine. So if you want to reach out after, that's good. I can just say there are requirements for the ERC. I think Jasmine touched on most of them or a lot of them, right? That there's the qualification for it, which requires some paperwork. So I don't know if there was an issue with that, but I'm happy to listen and take further information from you if you'd like to contact me directly.
Okay.
Oh, there's one more question that just popped in.
I've just popped in. Let's see, I have a lot of accumulated sick leave. What happens to this? Do they expire? How many consecutive sick days can I take without having to provide proof of anything?
Oh, okay.
So there's a couple questions in there.
I can answer the first part of that. So there's the sick leave, as many of us may know, that it accumulates, and then there is the option upon retirement, for instance, to apply sick leave for service credit if you're CalPERS. So I'm going to go ahead and let Jasmine do the second part. How many consecutive sick days can I take without having to provide proof of anything?
Mm-hmm. So it's depending on your CBA, which I believe I linked on the first slide. So if you miss 3 to 5 consecutive days, then you should apply for family medical leave.
And then also just to point out, there are reasons given in, various CBAs of when, sick time is applied, the reasons to take it. So you can consult, if this is from somebody who's representing, you can consult your CBA for understanding when sick time will be applied. Whether there's a reason applied or not, or whether there's proof provided or not. Okay.
Okay, if we still have a few minutes, so if you have any more questions, feel free to put those in the Q&A. I know we've had there were a couple questions about whether or not the slides will be posted. Absolutely. We will post the slides, and all of the hyperlinks will be included in there as well. I know they can't be copied from the chat. When you disable the chat, it doesn't let you do anything. So that is unfortunate, but we will, I did put them in the Q&A, and they will also be hyperlinked in the slides. We will also post this video in the same section. And again, we have our town halls page. So everything will be posted here on our town halls page. There'll be a new section for this town hall that will have, much like the last one, it'll have the presentation files, like the slides, our recording, and then all the Q&A. So all of the Q&A that y'all have put in here and anything that came in ahead of time, we will put that in kind of a spreadsheet format, so it's a little easier to read. And you'll be able to review all of that after the fact too. So give us a few days to get that done, and then we'll send out a message to let you know when it's ready, and you can look at that anytime.
All right, I wanted to say thank you for everyone who attended, and thank you for our team that presented. If there's any follow-up questions from the audience participants that you're thinking of and didn't get a chance to ask, please go ahead and ask. And we will get answers to you, and then obviously answers will be posted, as Carrie said. But thank you so much for participating. Really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.